What is up, everyone? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfill, and today we're diving into the character creation process for Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Now, this is a guide more geared towards beginners as opposed to veterans who already know all this stuff. So, if you're someone who has played this game through before and you'd like to add to the conversation, I look forward to hearing whatever you have to say down in the comments below. But if you're new, this video is perfectly designed for you to be able to understand how to get the most out of Deadfire, because Pillars of Eternity has its own unique style that's not like a lot of other CRPGs, especially if you're coming into this having played, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, which are both very similar in nature and have a lot of like leveling up progression. Some of that happens here, but there's also a lot of unique components and mechanics that affect your character. And considering you don't get all the same level up bonuses in Pillars of Eternity as you do in those games, it's important to understand character creation so that your character isn't sort of weakened by those decisions. So without further ado, we're going to get into this whole video. Before we do, though, as always, like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. And don't forget to join our Discord if you'd like to hang out with us and play games and etc. Let's get into it. Right out of the gate, you're going to be asked to choose your sex and race. The sex of your character doesn't really matter above and beyond just visuals and sort of romance options, but beyond that, it's really just cosmetic. There's not a lot of roleplay differences between the male and female other than some of the characters you can romance. So that being said, what is important, however, is the race and sub-race bonuses that you're going to get, because, and this is a very important component, you only get the stats that you have during character creation. You don't get more stats when you level up. We're going to talk more about that when we get to the attributes section, but understanding that whatever you start with is what you get throughout the whole game, it means that these sub-race bonuses that you get are going to be something that impact you far more in Pillars of Eternity than they will in any other game. Deadfire uses the same bonuses as the first game, so if you've played the first game, you might be familiar with this, but let's very quickly run through these. The Almawa get +2 might. The dwarves get +2 might, +1 con, -1 dex. The elves get +1 dex, +1 perception. Godlike get +1 dex and +1 int. Humans get +1 might, +1 resolve. Orlans get -1 might to +2 perception and +1 to resolve. But then you get into the additional bonuses that you're going to get from your sub race section. So let's go ahead and click the next button so you'll understand what I mean. So looking at as an example, the difference between the Hearth Orlan and the Wild Orlan is that the Hearth Orlan are also going to have this called Minor Threat. When they attack a target that is also being threatened by a teammate, they convert some of their hits to crits. The Wild Orlan are naturally sound of mind and gain resistance against resolve afflictions. But we can also look at something like, say, the Godlike, and notice that each one of these has something that's completely unique. Death's Usher, I need to know how to pronounce that. Death's Usher and Pallid Fate. Then you get Battle Forged and Ashen Skinned. You get the Silver Tide with the Moon Godlike, and with the Nature Godlike, you get Wellspring of Life. So things are, there are some additional sort of perks to the sub-races that you really want to dive into so that you fully understand what you're getting into when you're creating a character here in Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Difference between Boreal Dwarves and Mountain Dwarves is an example. Boreal Dwarves get Hunter's Instincts. Mountain Dwarves get the Hail and Hardy. So very important to when you're going through the races to make sure you check these sub-race components so that you understand what you're getting into before we move on to the next section. So for this case, we're going to pick an Orlan, and we're going to go with the Hearth Orlan, and then go on from here. All right, as we move into the class section, you're going to be asked an important question. Are you going to make a single class or multi-class character? If this is your first time playing the game, highly recommend that you just stick with a single class character. Multi-class characters can select powers from 2 classes, but they gain access to higher level powers more slowly and cannot access their class's highest level powers. And they even warn you here, multi-class characters are not recommended for new players. So bear that in mind, because if you want to get the most out of a character, and this is your first playthrough, stick to a single class character, which is what we're going to choose. Now, this is where we get into a whole range of options, and one of the best tips that I can give anyone who's playing Deadfire for the first time is please read through all of the information on the class, because there is so much more going on here than just, oh, a barbarian is this, or a rogue is this, or a druid is this. There's a ton of information here in the class description, including the bonuses that your character is going to get. And this is going to impact dramatically the gameplay, because these are the bonuses that help your character be the most that they can. Now, one of the major differences between Deadfire and the first game is that in the first game you could have 6 characters with a rounded amount of skills between them. But this game you can only have 5 characters. They did reduce the character count by 1, which means it is slightly more important than the first game to make sure that you pick a character that has all the right abilities that you want, but really dive into the descriptions for all of these and pay specific attention to the bonuses that they get. Now, one of the other really cool components of the Deadfire character creation is the fact that you can preview the ability tree. So we can come into, say, the Rogue as an example. We can see that they get +2 to bluff, streetwise, stealth, sleight of hand, and mechanics, but they can also, boom, preview this ability tree, which allows us to see how they're going to level up as we go along. This is a vast improvement over the first game. They spent a lot more time on being able to preview what a build is going to look like. That's something you didn't have the ability to do in the first game, and I so much appreciate this, because now during character creation you can really spend hours theory crafting if you want to see what you're going to get based on what class selection you want to make. But the way this works is you can see you have power on the left hand side. You have 1 through 9. And you'll notice that it says Power 1 is unlocked at level 1, Power 2 is level 3, Power 3 is level 5, then level 7, then level 9. So it's every 2 levels after that up to level 19, right? And so when you get to level 1, you get to pick some options from this line going across. Then when you get to level 3, you'll get some options to choose from across the board. You can't choose all of these. You'll get 1 or 2 selections for each time you get to one of these tiers. So you'll pay attention to that as you go through. But this gives you a preview of the abilities that you can choose, including passives and actives. Actives are on the left, passives are on the right. So bear that in mind when you're going through here. But it's very, very important to read through everything in your class information, because these are going to give you a lot of tips on how this character is going to be played, and of course previewing your abilities to fully understand what you're going to get out of that class in the game. Now, the other aspect of the class selection is understanding that many classes come with a subclass selection. So the rogue, as an example, can become a basic rogue, which has no subclass, or they can go on to become an assassin, a street fighter, a trickster, or a debonair. And each one of these has a variety of additional bonuses and penalties. So make sure you read through all of these, and pretty much across the board you can go through here and look at, say, like the druids. The druids have Animist, Fury, Life Giver, Shifter, Ancient. We can get into the fighter, who then has the option to become a Black Jacket, a Devoted, an Unbroken, or a Tactician. There are a ton of subclasses to choose from, so make sure you dig through all of these and really research what you want to do. All of this stuff is laid out for you, so don't be afraid to take your time, because again, it's all about understanding what your class can do as you dig in to everything related to your class and the chosen subclass that you're going to be picking. Hey everyone, Renfail here with the commercial part of the video where I say, hey, if you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. And thanks to all of our supporters are here on YouTube and over on Patreon, our highest members, our guild champions, Crazy's Relative, Remy D here on YouTube. And don't forget, if you want to support, it's really easy. You can do the memberships below, the Adventurers Guild, 3 different tiers. There's also the super thanks on any uploaded video or YouTube short that you find. There's also, of course, the super chats and stickers that you could do on any live stream or premiere, and the Patreon page if you want to dive into the fantasy world that I have with my brother and my wife, which is a tabletop game, a point-and-click adventure game, and a fantasy book series. All are great ways to keep this channel going and me going full-time. Thanks again for those of you who support. Let's get back to the video that you're watching now. All right, when you first get to the attribute page, which is where you're going to define your stats, you're going to notice something over here on the left-hand side. There are some stars next to some of these. So there's gold stars and silver stars. And when you hover over this, you're going to see, highly recommended for rogue, recommended for rogue, highly recommended for rogue, recommended for rogue. And we can go back to, say, the fighter, and we'll just click through and go to next. It doesn't really matter because we're just doing this for the purposes of showing you. So the rogue has 4. The fighter has 3. Most of them have 3 recommended. Some have 4. So just pay attention when you go through. The thing I wanted to mention about this is the fact that a lot of people will tell you to spec your character a specific way. They'll tell you to be like, oh, go min-max and drop your resolve down all the way to 0 and put your points here, there, that, or the other. I would highly recommend that you actually just pay attention to what they're telling you to do. There's a reason they have these stars next to here. And if you read the description on the left-hand side, might, as an example, might contributes to damage, healing effectiveness, and the fortitude defense. It represents a character's physical and spiritual strength, brute force, as well as their ability to channel powerful magic. So there's this is not Dungeons and Dragons, and this is not Pathfinder. The stats do some similar things here, but they also do some vastly different things here. Like, for example, the ability to channel powerful magic is based upon your might stat. What? So these are the things you need to pay attention to, but really pay attention to the bonuses, because, again, this is where you are going to get the most bang for your buck with your character. Moving on to the next tip, which we did briefly mention at the beginning of the video. One of the most important aspects of Pillars of Eternity, both 1 and 2, is that the stats you create your character with are the stats that you're stuck with for the entirety of the game. Your attributes do not go up in this rule set. So in, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, every 3 or 4 levels, you're going to get to choose a stat or 2 that you can adjust and level up as you go throughout the game. So you might start off with a 16 dex, but you can eventually get that to 20 dex if you play the game. That is not the case here. The attributes that you get when you create your character, they're the only ones you're going to get. These can be modified by gear and, certain buffs and things of that nature. But whatever you start off with, you're stuck with them for the rest of the game. So it's very, very important to go through here and understand that you're not going to be able to change these. So it's very important to not only pay attention to the gold stars and the silver stars here for your character, but also to think about, well, what is it that I want to do with my character long term? Is this an archer? Is this a dagger build? Maybe I need to go back and review the subclass section again to make sure that I'm getting the most out of whatever it is I want to play based upon the attributes that I'm going to be choosing. But also you need to pay attention to the fact that the culture can impact things as well. So just remember the stats and attributes or attributes that you get when you create your character are the ones you're stuck with for the whole game, so make sure to choose wisely. Moving on to culture, and then beyond that into lore and things of that nature, backgrounds and stuff. Remember that bonuses are really important. So if we go back to your previous stat page, you're going to notice that things, previously my resolve was at 10. And then because I picked a deer, and you can also see this on the bottom of your screen where it says attributes. So as you get down here and pick the various um, cultures, you'll notice that my stats on the bottom are changing. So this is another aspect of this because each one of these has a different bonus. So the culture is just where are you from? What's your culture? Where what part of the world are you from? Are you from the Edir? Are you from the Deadfire Archipelago, the Ixamitil Plains, Old Valia, Roatai, the Living Lands, the White That Wins? All these are going to impact your stats by one. And the most important thing is that once you've chosen one of these, you can immediately go back. So, for example, if I wanted to pick the deer, and that might give me a +1 to resolve, well, I don't need 11 resolve. So I can drop that down and say, well, where do I want to put this other point? And I'm going to say, I want to put it into might. We're going to go for might, and we'll leave it there. So I have now adjusted my attributes even more based upon the culture that I've chosen for my character. And once we've chosen the culture for the character, we now get to go into the backgrounds. And the backgrounds have additional bonuses, but these don't apply to your attributes. These are your skills. So every character, there's a ton of skills in the game, right? So skills are things like, diplomacy, bluff, intimidate, survival, athletics, alchemy, history, so on and so forth. Sleight of hand, streetwise. And you can hover over these and they'll tell you what they're for. So as you're going through here, think about the character that you're going to be playing. What do you want as a background? And then go from there. This being a character that I would want to be heavy on the, say, trap side of things, like being able to disarm traps and things of that nature. I would want to look for something that's going to give me those bonuses. But if you're going like mechanics, this is a big one. Mechanics are traps and locks. So I'm always going to want to pick something, or in this case, I'm going to want to pick something that's heavy on the mechanics, but also gives me something, if I could find one that gives me mechanics plus, say something else. I'm not seeing anything that's going to give me the, mechanics plus other things. So I might want to say, well, do I like the hunter? I don't really need alchemy. I don't need survival. So maybe I go, if I'm not going to get the mechanics, what else can I get? Well, the merchant gives me streetwise, bluff, and diplomacy. Those are all good for conversation bonuses. So maybe that's the right pick for me. Maybe intimidate, athletics, streetwise. All things to think about. So make sure when you're going through the background section, pay attention. It's just as important as the recommended stats in a way, because you're going to get a lot of information here. So just pick one that's going to influence your character in the way that you see fit. One of the areas where Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire expands upon the character creation process above and beyond just previewing the ability trees and be able to see where your character is going to end up is weapon proficiencies. So when you hover over these different, when you click on these various different ones, you'll find information on the left-hand side. Also, you can right-click and bring this window up as well if you want to know more information about the weapon itself. But what you're looking for is it says here, proficiency in a weapon or shield grants access to a modal ability. So a modal ability is one that can be turned on or off or set to different modes to produce different effects. It says here, for example, all weapon proficiencies grant modal abilities that are available with the proficient weapon or when the proficient weapon or shield is equipped. Similarly, a paladin's zealous auras can be set to one of 3 different states. So modal abilities should be changed based on the tactical needs of combat. For example, if a character would not benefit from the additional penetration of a saber's windmill slash, you can turn it off to improve the character's recovery time. A paladin may wish to use Zealous Charge at the beginning of a battle, but switch it to Zealous Focus to gain more accuracy once the fight is underway. This is really more for the advanced side of playing the game, but it's important to understand. There's no penalty for using a weapon without the corresponding proficiency. This is one area where a lot of people get confused. Like, don't I need proficiency to use a weapon? That is not true. A character who's not proficient in a weapon only loses access to the associated options, the modal abilities. So, for example, if I were to choose the Arbalist, I would get Overbearing Shot. If I were to choose bows as a general, that's the Arbalist. Crossbow, I get Interrupting Shot. The hunting bow gives me rapid shot, and the warg bow gives me overdraw. And just pay attention to the descriptions because they tell you what they do. Firearms, if you went with the Arbicus, you're going to get aimed shot. The blunderbuss is going to get powder burns. The pistol is going to get rapid shot, so on and so forth. I can go down here through all of these. So thinking about who your character is and what your character is going to be, for example, I might go with stilettos and possibly, I could only pick one. So actually, I could pick two. I had accidentally done that. So I would click, say, for example, stilettos and maybe daggers, perhaps. I could also go like daggers and rapiers. Or if I really wanted to, I could go with like a pirate build. So we would go rapiers and pistols, right? So I'm going to get the rapid shot and the needle strike, right? It's really cool. I love weapon proficiencies. It's a really cool aspect of Deadfire. Much like other games, once you get into the character customization section, you'll be able to pick, your portrait, colors, head, voice, pose, and so on and so forth. And eventually you're going to get through all of this, and you're going to get down to the end. We're going to be, picking a name. Noob. Click next. And then we're going to get to a summary. And the summary, I really like the way it's laid out, by the way, because you have the portrait on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side you get the summary of the character. But in essence, this is the character creation process for Pillars of Eternity 2. So hopefully you've found this guide useful if you're a new player coming into the game. And if you're a veteran player, maybe there's some things in here that you hadn't known about before, or a different perspective on things. Either way, hopefully you found the video useful. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you never miss the updates on all the videos I do here. Check out all the other playlists, join us in Discord, like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Till then, happy gaming.